Why did I forget to record this? Hey everybody, it's Mark of Manlock Things, and today we're going to talk about scanning or digitizing your Polaroid or instant shots. So let's talk about how you digitize your Polaroids or your instant shots actually. It shouldn't be that complicated, and for me it always kind of baffles me when people send me messages, how do you scan your Polaroids, or how do you do that, and how do you scan it, and how do that, and it's like I really never had any problem scanning Polaroids. There's a few little tricks that you need to know, but it's not even tricks, it's just like that, to watch out what you're doing. One of the main things, for example, is don't put your DPI too high. Like, people love to scan at 3200 DPI. No use for a Polaroid. Like, the only thing you get out of 3200 DPI is problems, because you scan too much of the structure of the picture and not the picture itself. So 1600 DPI, way enough for a Polaroid image if we're talking about integral. But let's talk about first about what techniques we have to digitize our instant shots. So the first and easiest, scanning your images. You just need a flatbed scanner. It doesn't need to be a fancy one. You put your Polaroids there and you scan them. There could be one problem that exists. These are Newton rings. Newton rings happen when the PVC touches the glass, and if you don't have anti-Newton glass, which is only implemented in the most expensive scanners, you could get these Newton rings. I really rarely had seen them, but it can happen. And what helps with this is a scan adapter. And all of this is covered in a video of Matt Day. I'm pretty sure you know him. If you don't, I will link that video in the description below. And he has a really good video on the scan adapter, how to make your own one. It's just 2 cardboard plates with some double-sided tape. And that helps you actually putting your Polaroids always in the same position in the framing. Super easy to use, super easy to make. It helps you a lot in being faster in the scanning process. You can do that for whatever format you want. He shows it on Polaroid 600 film or a 670 in the integral film, but you could also build one of these holders for Instax film without a problem for your measurements, easy as that. So that's the first one, scanning that. With the scan adapter, since you have the double-sided tape, you stick the image to the double-sided tape, and the sticking image is now lifted off the glass a little bit. Focus of the scanner is still there, even a little bit over the glass, but it helps to remove these Newton rings. So that's something positive with this Polaroid holder. If you have that, you're fine. There was once one sold by Polaroid made of acrylic, and it was pretty expensive. I can't remember if it was like 30 euros or something like that. I didn't get why people bought it, because it's so easy to make. So yeah, that's easy solution. If you really want to see me make one, write in the comments below. So that's for scanning. Then when you're in the digital process, don't scan over 1600 DPI. I would do the sharpening in software if you're able to do that, like out of the scanning software, but like in Photoshop or something else, or Lightroom. Okay, so for the scanning process, something you should also do before you scan your images is take one of these. These are cleaning gloves for your lens, for example, or stuff like that, and just wipe over your Polaroid once so you get all the dust that is on there off. Maybe you don't see it with your eyes, but there's a lot of dust, and every scanner enhances dust, like every scan does. So that's good to use one of these. So that's scanning. If you want to see more, check out Matt's video. He does a detailed scanning tutorial. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below about scanning if you want to see a detailed scanning video. And now let's go to the second option. The second option is actually digitizing your image with a camera. One of these up there, one of the camera. And that's actually something a little bit more difficult to do, but you don't need a scanner, and a lot of you probably have a digital camera. It doesn't need to be at all fancy camera, but you need something you need to buy. And that's 2 light sources that need to be exactly the same light source, diffusion, and temperature. So it needs to be the same light bulbs, it needs to be the same position, and it needs to have the same reflector or whatever on top. You could use some daylight lamps, you could use some 3500 Kelvin lamps, so like warm bulbs, but they have to be in the right position. They have to be the same distance. So for the setup, let's take a closer look on how the setup would look like. So we will take our Polaroid. Our Polaroid will be flat down here. So that's our Polaroid. Above the Polaroid, about here, we have our digital camera. That could be every camera, doesn't need to be any at all fancy. It helps if you have a macro lens, but Polaroids are pretty big, so you don't need a macro lens. The further away, the bigger the distance between camera and Polaroid, the better, because you kind of eliminate light reflections that could get on your Polaroid. So as we know, instant images are reflective they are super reflective. So if I tilt it like this, you can see my light source here, and yeah, if I put it down, it actually works pretty good, because I have a really soft light, and it's not in the angle of the camera that's just straight above. So that's the setup. But like you see, if I change the position a little bit, how fast I get the reflection in. And that's something you have to keep in mind. We have our camera here, and here's the Polaroid. So where should we position our two lights? We always need two lights for this process. I would recommend. You could do it with a really big soft light source that's not reflective, but I recommend two light sources. And they need to be out here. So we have our light sources, and they should go actually not like this, but this here, this angle should be more, so more than 90 degrees. This one should be flat. And these lines, this one is a little bit too wrong, so we need actually light that goes from here to this edge here. This one should go exactly the other way to this edge, so that you have light both edges of the Polaroid, which is pretty hard, to be honest, with a Polaroid because it's so small, so you don't have to worry too much about that. But that's how we're gonna light the subject. These distances here, left and right, need to be exactly the same distance. So that's something really important, that you have the same amount of light going over it. And since light reflects off the surface in the same direction, so let's redraw it. So we have our Polaroid here, and since the light rays come in like this, you know, so that's our light source that gives us that light, but light like comes in that way and reflects in the same angle that we have here off again. It goes like this. This one and this one are actually the same. They're both the same angle. And since our lens is sitting up here, none of the light actually, it goes like this and like this. So none of the light goes like this, you know? Doesn't work. So that's something you have to keep in mind when doing these repro pictures. So let's see. I have my image here, and my light is actually like up here, okay? So the light is up here, and that's actually really high angle, so it reflects again up into the camera. But that's something to keep in mind, like you need to have that flat angle to light out the image. As soon as you have that, you have a really nice lighting of the Polaroid, and you can start taking your images. I highly recommend using a tripod to have the same position. You just put your Polaroid there, take a picture, take another one, take a picture. That's really easy to do if you have a tripod, and I would recommend either time release, so put it on 2 seconds, press the button, go away, because every button push makes vibrations. And if you don't have the most expensive tripod, it will vibrate and it will actually give you like micro vibrations, it's called, in the image, which won't give you the 100% perfect image. That's something to keep in mind. If you have a remote, use the remote. There are some infrared remotes that some people have. The cable remote is also pretty fine, but everything that you get away as moving from the camera helps you in a better image. If you want to make even higher resolution pictures, which I don't think are necessary, you could take one of these macro sliding plates that you can get on Amazon or somewhere else, and then just move your camera left, right a little bit, 1 millimeter, another millimeter, like in all directions, and then stitch it together and get a really high resolution image. My Sony camera could actually do that in camera. It's called multi-exposure, and it takes 5 images and then stitches them together for higher dynamic range and resolution. It would be like 170 megapixels or something like that, like ridiculous. I never need that for a Polaroid. Now we have our image, and the good thing, if you do it on digital camera and everything, you can actually put it in an environment that's looking pretty good. So you could actually use something like this. I use a tile. You can get them at some hardware shop pretty cheap, because actually if you say you only need one tile, like they normally give it to you for free, as you say like, yeah, I'm thinking about redecorating my bathroom and we need one sample tile, can we get it? And I got like a ton of tiles for product shots for €1 a tile. So, and they're pretty massive, like they're huge. They're 60 by 60 or 1 meter by 1 meter. Normally one of these tiles is €50 or something like that. You can think about like, do you really want to have it like just flat laying there on a white surface, on a black surface, or do you want to have it like nicely decorated, put a camera next to it, put some lenses next to it, or just like, you know, just like have your Helios lens or something like that right next to it with reflections. You have a lot more options when you're doing the flat lay. And that's the second option. Also use a cleaning cloth before, because as you can see, this one is a little dusty here, it was lying out. And then you should be fine to take an image again. To furthermore reduce the reflections, you could actually get a cardboard, something like this here, a black cardboard. Cut a little hole in the middle, the size of your lens, and put that on your camera. So I'm gonna use some lens here. So that's gonna be our lens. And we just would cut the hole exactly like this around the lens. And then we would have a black surrounding of the lens facing down which reduces the reflections in the Polaroid itself. Because if the lens or the camera would be illuminated by the light that you have on the sides, it would also start reflecting onto your Polaroid probably. So that's something to keep in mind. I would always go into a dark room and just have these two light sources to illuminate the Polaroid that you want to take the picture of. For the shooting, I always recommend shooting in RAW. It gives you a lot more options, and then when you're going into your digital workflow, you can edit a lot more and try to get a picture where it really belongs. Otherwise, I would set your camera, if you have the chance to set it on like manual mode, do that. Have your manual settings, figure out the right lighting, and then you just have to change all the Polaroids and just go through them. Which brings us to the next thing. You probably don't have that many Polaroids as I do, if you're lucky, because I'm really overwhelmed by the amount of Polaroids I do have. And then I need to start sorting them in a digital way, and that's where I use Lightroom at the moment. And I tag all my images. I tag them with persons in the picture, I tag them with film format, I tag them with camera I used for the picture, and I tag them with special things that happened in that shot or something like that. So I can always find images that I'm looking for, like, okay, I want to have sample shots of the RF70 from Mint. I just search for RF70 and it gives me all the shots I took with that camera. So that's something, if you're going to a digital process, keep a structure of your images or keep them organized. It helps a ton in the after process, or work afterwards. And that's for Polaroids and Instax and everything. It works great. But if you want to do that on negatives, you should actually check out a video from Nick Exposed. And he does it for negatives with a macro lens and a tube, where he really cuts out all the light around and uses a light table from below to illuminate the negative. It's a really good video. It's 25 minutes or something like that, and it will also be linked in the description below. And check it out, and also give Nick some love. His channel is still growing, and he's a really interesting guy and does great work. So that's it, actually, the scanning process. If you have questions, please drop them in the comments below. But keep in mind, Polaroids are not that complicated. They're actually pretty simple things. The only thing is they are reflective, and they could generate Newton rings on scanners. So that's two things that you have to keep in mind for these two processes. But otherwise, it's easy to do. Don't get too much technically on that thing. You could actually just use big light source that's not reflecting off your image. So as I said, 45 degrees, always remember light comes in the same angle as it goes out. And if you remember that and have a black cardboard over your camera, you could actually shoot with your digital phone. Just take a black cardboard, cut out a little hole in the middle, and then put the phone on and take the image of your image. Just make a light source from the sides, which illuminates the image enough that you have enough light so you don't get too much grain on your picture. Use a lens that's more tele, so something about 80 or 70 millimeters at least, or even more. So you again make the angle smaller, and that's also cutting out a little bit of light. And that's actually the things you should keep in mind. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. If you did like the video, thumbs up. If you didn't, thumbs down. If you want to see more content, subscribe to the channel. And next week we will be talking about archiving these images that we just digitalized, and where to put them and how people actually store their images. So see you next week. Bye.